My coworker set me up on a blind date with his ex to humiliate me, but it worked out. I, 34 male, separated from my wife early in 2023, and by early 2024, the divorce was final. It was a rough split, so I decided to move to Chicago for a fresh start with a new job. At first, I mostly kept to myself, but I got to know a couple of younger co-workers, Sam and Alex, both 26. Even though they were younger, we bonded quickly since we were the only single guys in the office. This past summer, we really started to click. We hung out almost every week, even went to the Pitchfork Festival together, and I started to feel like I was finally coming out of my shell. About a month ago, while we were talking about dating, they asked me about my experience. I admitted I hadn't been on a date since my wife, and after that, they both got a little quiet and awkward. The next evening, we were out for drinks, and they brought up the idea of setting me up with a friend of theirs, Rachel, a 26-year-old. Sam showed me a picture of her on his phone, and I thought she looked cute, so I agreed. They exchanged a quick, weird smirk, which made me think they were a little unsure. Rachel was a bigger girl, and I'm not exactly small myself, so I figured they might have been hesitant, thinking I'd take offense or something. But honestly, I found her attractive, so I didn't mind, and I didn't dwell on it. We planned to meet the following weekend. I showed up at the restaurant, spotted Rachel, waved, and walked over, but something felt off. She acted like she didn't recognize me, as if she was expecting someone else. Confused, I pulled out my phone and showed her the text Sam had sent me, along with her picture. She looked at the phone, and for a second I thought she might start crying. I quickly apologized and told her I could leave if she felt uncomfortable. She paused for a moment, then said we should go ahead with the date. The first 20 minutes were rough. She seemed absolutely miserable, and I had no clue what was going on. She looked like someone had just told her the worst news of her life. I'm not sure what came over me, but since things were going so badly, I guess I just stopped feeling nervous. Maybe I wanted to lighten the mood or cheer her up. She was wearing this gorgeous top that really showed off her figure, and when she seemed on the verge of tears again, I leaned in and said, "You look absolutely beautiful in that top, and I can't help but feel happy to be here with you." She stared at me for a second, then blushed and smiled, and it was like a switch flipped. From that moment on, she was fully engaged in the date. We talked about her job, her move to Chicago, and how she grew up with Sam and Alex. She even mentioned she was working her way through the Criterion Collection films, and we bonded over our shared love for them and our mutual frustration that they add new movies faster than we can watch. After dinner, we walked around downtown, ended up at the park, and somehow stayed out past midnight. I only noticed because she started to look concerned about how she'd get home, so I offered for her to crash at my place, which was within walking distance. And believe it or not, we didn't even sleep together that night. We just talked, cuddled, and fell asleep. I opened up about my divorce and how hurt I'd been, something I hadn't said out loud until then. But with Rachel, I just felt comfortable. Ever since that night, we've been together, and honestly, it's been better than my marriage ever was. I know it's only been a month, but I'm serious. I'm going to marry this girl. But here's where things get weird. After that first date, I asked Sam the next day why Rachel seemed to think she was meeting someone else. He brushed it off, saying she hadn't wanted to see a picture of me, so maybe his description was off. Still, when I brought Rachel up on Monday, both Sam and Alex acted strange. They couldn't believe I had a good time, and Alex in particular has been super distant. He even leaves the room whenever I mention her. On top of that, they've been canceling plans on me, especially when I say I want to bring Rachel along. We'll make plans, but as soon as I mention her, they back out. I'm starting to think they might be jealous or something. I'm not sure, but the whole thing is giving me weird vibes. I'm thinking about bringing it up to Rachel to see if she has any insight because this whole situation has me puzzled. Can't believe I'm back with an update. Things got weird. I wasn't expecting to write an update so soon, but things took an odd turn, and I thought I'd get it all down. Yesterday, I walked into the break room at work where Sam and Alex were hanging out. As soon as I sat down, Alex got up and mumbled something about having forgotten something he needed to do. That left me with Sam, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I asked, "Why has Alex been avoiding me since my date with Rachel? What aren't you telling me?" Sam hesitated for a moment, stammering, before saying it wasn't his place to talk about and suggested I ask Rachel. I pressed him on why he would even set me up if there was some history between them. Sam got quiet, then finally said, "Honestly, I didn't think Alex would act this way. I thought I was doing him a favor." That left me more confused than ever. I texted Rachel and invited her over for dinner so we could talk about it. She agreed, and I planned to bring it up that night. When she arrived, everything started off nice. We kissed, and the evening was going well, but I couldn't shake my nerves. I wasn't sure what this big secret was, but I had a feeling it was serious, something that could potentially wreck the relationship. Rachel could sense my unease and asked me what was wrong. I didn't have much tact and blurted out, "What's the deal with you and Alex and Sam?" She looked at me for a long moment, just like on our first date when I thought she was going to cry. Then, she began explaining how she met Sam in high school, and they had always been just friends. But she didn't mention Alex, and I quickly caught on. "Didn't Alex know Sam in high school too?" I asked. She went silent for a few moments, then softly said, "Yes." Tears started rolling down her face as she told me about her past with Alex. They grew up on the same street and had been friends since they were little kids, riding bikes, catching lightning bugs, just typical Midwest childhood stuff. Alex was her first kiss when they were 12, and Rachel admitted she'd had a crush on him for as long as she could remember. But as they got older, Alex started treating her differently. He was athletic, outgoing, and played tennis, while Rachel was more reserved and stayed inside a lot. She struggled with her weight and wasn't someone guys at school paid attention to. Alex, meanwhile, ignored her at school but acted like her best friend when they were home. This dynamic went on for years. He'd ignore her in public, but be close when no one else was around. Then, during their sophomore year, Rachel finally confessed her feelings to Alex, and instead of reciprocating or being kind, he used the opportunity to sleep with her. After that, he wouldn't even acknowledge her, not even at home. Days later, Alex started dating a more popular girl, leaving Rachel devastated. They were together for 6 months, and after they broke up, Alex came crawling back, trying to pick things up with Rachel again. At first, she resisted, but eventually she fell back into their old pattern. He'd be sweet to her at home, but ignore her at school. And this cycle went on all through high school and into college, where they both ended up at the University of Illinois in Champaign. In college, things shifted slightly. Alex would call her over to his place, she'd cook dinner for him, and they'd sleep together. This went on whether he was single or in a relationship. Rachel, meanwhile, was never in a serious relationship, at least not publicly. In her mind, she was in a relationship with Alex, even if no one else acknowledged it. Eventually, Rachel did get a boyfriend, but that didn't stop Alex. He wanted to hang out with her, and this time, he even talked to her more in public. But when she broke up with her boyfriend to be with Alex, he flaked again and slipped right back into their old routine. This went on until Rachel started seeing a therapist for her depression. With the therapist's help, she realized how toxic her relationship with Alex was and decided to set boundaries. She told him that if they were going to continue seeing each other, it had to be exclusive. That was just a week before our date. When Sam contacted her about the blind date, Rachel thought she'd be meeting Alex, not me. It wasn't until she saw me at the restaurant that she realized she needed to let Alex go for good. When I complimented her, she realized she'd been missing out on real connections for 15 years. After our date, Alex tried his usual tricks, but this time she blocked him, Rachel cried as she told me this whole story, apologizing over and over. She kept saying she knew how foolish she'd been, but she genuinely liked me and didn't know how to bring up her past with Alex without scaring me off. I must have looked upset because she kept apologizing and asking me to say something. But all I could think about was how Alex used to brag about this girl he had wrapped around his finger. The girl who always gave him what he wanted, but he never treated right. I always thought Alex was an ass for that, but never put two and two together. I knew it was her. So, without saying a word, I got down on my knees, unbuttoned her jeans, pulled down her underwear, and made sure she felt appreciated in a way Alex never did. When she caught her breath and smiled, I said, "Don't ever apologize for those jerks again," and we went to the bedroom. Today, I requested a transfer to another department. I'm all mixed up inside. If it weren't for Sam and Alex, I never would have met Rachel. But knowing what I know now, I can't stand them. They're two of the worst people I've ever known, and I hope they stay single forever. They don't deserve anyone. Now on to the next story, Story 2. The scary truth behind why my boyfriend doesn't get along with my niece. I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I've been in a relationship with my boyfriend, named Ryan, for about 5 years now. We have become quite close to each other's families, and we've even talked about the possibility of getting married someday. However, there's one sensitive topic that always seems to come up: kids. Whenever we start discussing it, Ryan tends to withdraw a bit. He doesn't completely shut down the idea, but he doesn't show much excitement either. I've always envisioned having children of my own, and he usually responds by saying he just wants me to be happy. So, I've been okay with that for the time being. Things took an unexpected turn during this holiday season. Normally, our arrangement is that Ryan spends Christmas Eve with my family while I celebrate Christmas Day with his. This year was particularly special because it was my first Christmas with my 2-year-old niece, Lily. She had a tough start to life and spent her first Christmas in the hospital, but thankfully, she is doing just fine now. I made sure to spend as much time with her as possible. We played together, unwrapped gifts, and I even acted out her favorite story using her favorite doll. We even wore matching outfits for the occasion. My sister, Karen, expressed her gratitude for giving her and her husband a break from looking after Lily the whole day. However, she also mentioned that she noticed Ryan seemed a bit distant from Lily. I had observed that too, but I figured he might just feel awkward about playing with her since he sees himself as just my boyfriend. Karen reassured me it was fine because she and her husband already considered Ryan part of the family. I tried to encourage Ryan to join in and help set up Lily's new dollhouse, but he claimed he wasn't feeling well. Instead, he opted to drink a few more beers and sat outside on the porch, scrolling through his phone. I didn't push him further and thought he might genuinely not be feeling great. Just to clarify, Ryan isn't an alcoholic. He's a sweet, caring, and funny guy, although he does have a tendency to be a bit brooding and lost in thought. He's never been abusive, manipulative, or moody, and he usually only drinks during special occasions. The following day, we had lunch with Ryan's family. After the meal, I helped with the cleanup alongside his mother, Linda, and his brother, Chris. Ryan's family is wonderful. They are incredibly supportive and respectful of our relationship, always checking in on us, but never overstepping their boundaries. While we were tidying up, Linda asked me how my sister's baby was doing. Since they had lent a hand with the bills during Lily's hospital stay, I happily told them she was doing wonderfully and had spent Christmas at home. They were thrilled to hear the good news. While we were cleaning, I thought it might be a good idea to share my observations about Ryan. I initially hoped Linda might provide some advice on how to engage him with kids since he didn't seem to be the type to play with them easily. However, Chris casually mentioned Emily, and Linda quickly hushed him. I had no idea who Emily was, but I found out she was Ryan's niece from his older sister, Jessica. Tragically, Emily had passed away when she was only 3, and afterward, Jessica and her husband moved away. I had never met them. Later that evening, after a few drinks, Linda and Chris decided to share the story with me. I didn't pressure them to do so. They simply felt comfortable opening up. When Ryan was about 14 years old, he was incredibly close to his niece, Emily. He was like a fun uncle to her. Sadly, one summer day, while they were playing outside, a car driven by a distracted driver sped into their yard. In a split second, Ryan instinctively reached for Emily to protect her. While he managed to shield her from the worst of the impact, he sustained severe injuries. He was in a coma for 3 days, but unfortunately, Emily didn't survive the crash. The entire incident was caught on a neighbor's security camera, so everyone recognized that Ryan had acted heroically. However, Jessica, consumed by grief, developed a resentment towards Ryan for not being able to save her daughter. She and her husband relocated to cope with their loss, and since then, they had very little contact with the family. Ryan took the loss very hard, feeling immense guilt for not being able to save Emily or attend her funeral because he was still in the hospital recovering. Listening to this heartbreaking story brought tears to my eyes. I had no idea Ryan had been carrying such a heavy load. The incident had turned into a family secret that no one dared to discuss, fearing it might trigger Ryan's pain. They hadn't shared this with me sooner because they thought Ryan would be the one to tell me, but I explained that he hadn't and that I never pressed him about it. I thanked them for being open and told them I would talk to Ryan when the right moment presented itself. They were understanding and offered their support if I needed anything. Now, I find myself uncertain about how to approach Ryan. I know that seeking professional help to work through this trauma and grief is crucial, even if it happened many years ago. However, I am unsure how to bring it up with him. I want him to know that my love for him is unwavering and that I will support him every step of the way as he begins to heal, especially if we plan to start a family of our own someday. I didn't see it coming, but the perfect opportunity to talk to Ryan about everything showed up in an unexpected way: a pregnancy scare. Back in January, I had a false positive, and it all happened so fast within just 1 day. It was a roller coaster of emotions for me, but in the end, I found out I wasn't pregnant after all. When Ryan got home that night, I knew I had to be honest with him about everything. I told him I had a pregnancy scare, but there was nothing for him to worry about since it turned out to be negative. At that moment, I saw the color drain from his face. He looked so pale that I honestly thought he might faint. I was holding his hand, and he suddenly felt cold and sweaty. He rushed to the fridge to grab some water, clearly spiraling. That's when I decided to tell him that I knew about Emily. I felt it was necessary to come clean because I knew that was what was causing his panic. I reassured him that I was right there beside him and that he could react however he needed to. I kept apologizing for crossing his boundaries and lying to him for weeks. I also asked him not to be angry at his family because they meant well when they shared the information with me. Throughout this entire exchange, I struggled to read Ryan's expressions. I couldn't tell if he was about to yell in anger or break down in tears. I mentioned that we didn't have to delve deeper into the topic if he didn't want to, but I was more than willing to listen and support him whenever he was ready. The only thing Ryan asked at that moment was whether I wanted to break up with him, which really confused me. I told him, of course not, and we hugged. He then said he needed some time to process everything before we talked more, which I completely respected. For the next week, we tried to act like nothing had changed, but there was this huge unspoken weight hanging between us. The following weekend, about 8 days later, we finally sat down to discuss everything. Ryan started by apologizing for not telling me sooner. He explained that his last girlfriend had broken up with him after he revealed the story about Emily. He said he felt such relief when I reassured him I wouldn't do that. Ryan opened up about how this has weighed heavily on him all this time and confirmed that he had never sought or received professional help. However, he mentioned he was open to it, although he didn't feel ready just yet. He also expressed concern that confronting those feelings might bring up some inner demons and pull me down with him. Ryan shared that from the moment Emily was born, he felt an instant and profound bond with her, along with a sense of responsibility, even though he was just a teenager. He realized how much he wanted to be a father in the future, but since the incident, he had been afraid of making another mistake. Because of that fear, he never really considered having kids, despite his desire to do so. I reassured him that we were on the same page. While I also wanted children with him someday, I had no intention of pressuring him when he wasn't ready. He admitted that whenever he saw me with my niece, Lily, he felt a bit jealous because he wanted to join in on the fun. However, he kept reminding himself to maintain distance for his own safety. I told him there was no need for that, and that he was more than welcome to join us whenever he wanted. I also mentioned that my sister and the rest of my family already considered him a part of our family, which I hoped would put him at ease. To lighten the mood, Ryan joked that now that I knew everything about him and still hadn't broken up with him, I should expect a proposal soon. We both laughed, but we agreed it was best to focus on his healing before getting engaged or discussing our future family plans. During our conversation, Ryan revealed another heartbreaking detail. He shared that during the height of the pandemic, Emily's father, Mark, reached out to him. Mark informed Ryan that Emily's mother, Jessica, had been hospitalized with COVID and that they were struggling financially due to medical bills and unemployment. He explained that Jessica had been almost catatonic since Emily's passing and had resisted any outside help. Sadly, she had been institutionalized for about a year following a self-harming incident. For the past decade, she had become cold, distant, and withdrawn from everyone. It turned out Ryan's family was aware of all of this, but they chose to sweep it under the rug. They had been providing financial support to Mark, but framed it as Jessica simply wanting low contact since their move. Ryan clarified that Jessica never blamed him for what happened to Emily, even though he had felt that way when he was younger. It was more about their parents interpreting the events in a way to protect the family's reputation. After Mark reached out, Ryan started to understand things better. However, he still hadn't fully processed everything and partly blamed himself for what happened. For now, we're exploring couples therapy to discuss our issues in a safe and supportive environment. We've already found a therapist we both like, and we've had 6 sessions with her so far. From what I can tell, Ryan seems much happier and less burdened. We've even been given some homework from our sessions, and he's been the one reminding me to do mine. Right now, I hope that Ryan will feel ready to open up about Emily when he's comfortable so that he can truly heal. This isn't just for me, it's for his mental and emotional well-being. There's no rush. I want him to take his time.